Hello and welcome to this bite-sized briefing. This is your opportunity to hear from an elite athlete on an issue that matters to you. In this video, you will get to hear from Commonwealth and European gold-winning swimmer Adam Whitehead, all around the theme of mental health and mental well-being. Adam will share his experiences and then also some advice for you to apply in your own lives. So, looking forward to getting started. Big thank you to Westfield Health for making this video possible.
Take your mark.
Final of the men's 100 metres breaststroke. Piper of Australia 1, Peterson 2, Gibson of England 3, Whitehead England 4, Mew England 5, Narby Canada 6, Parkin 7 and Brown 8.
Well, Whitehead looked good this morning and he's looking good now down his first length. Gibson's going with him. Gibson, a great 50 metre breaststroke specialist. Gibson in the black hat, the top of the English guys, in the white hat, that's Whitehead. Gibson is #1 in the world on a 50. So 3 down in the black. You'd expect him to turn first. He went out in a 28.4 to break the Commonwealth record. He's gone out in a 28.5. Whitehead with him. Bit better on the 200, but the 3 English guys in there. You've got the Canadian Narby down the bottom. Expecting Whitehead to come back a little bit. Narby could be a spoiler, and also the South African Peterson. This is going to be a really tight finish. Well, Gibson's still holding it, mate. Gibson holding it.
Gibson's looking good. He's from a very tough third 25 metres there. Can he hold on? It's very tight indeed. Whitehead coming back in 4. Gibson and Whitehead. Narby also coming back. It's very close indeed. The winner is Adam Whitehead for England.
Hi, I've been given some quick fire questions to answer, so here goes. My favourite sport, I guess it has to be swimming. I still love watching swimming on the TV, especially at the Olympic Games and cheering on people like Adam Whitehead, who now holds the world record in the event that I used to swim. My favourite food is Thai food. I visited there a few years ago and absolutely loved the place, especially the food. My favourite film, now I don't get time to watch films so much anymore, but I spend a little bit of time. My son is mad keen on Buzz Lightyear, and that's been a firm favourite in the house over the last few months. My favourite character, I guess growing up, it was the time of Superman, and I guess my favourite character would be Superman. Who wouldn't want to fly? Where did I grow up? I grew up in a small town called Bedworth, which is just outside of Coventry. And actually in Coventry is where I went to school, secondary school, and where I trained for the majority of my career. My hero growing up, it has to be a swimmer called Nick Gillingham from Birmingham, who's from the 200 metres breaststroke, 3 separate Olympic Games. He came 2nd, 3rd and 4th. And despite not winning the Olympic Games, for me, he was a real idol growing up and someone who I based my training and my stroke on, actually. My first competition would probably have been my club championships at Bedworth Otters in a small club. Did I win? No, I didn't. I wasn't the fastest swimmer in my swimming club. In fact, I wasn't the fastest swimmer in my school when I was at primary school. But I do remember those races very well with great memories. My greatest achievement. So my greatest swimming achievement is probably becoming European champion and Commonwealth champion. And when I won the European Championships, I think I swam the 5th fastest time in history. And when I won the Commonwealth Games, that was a Commonwealth Games record. So they were 2 fantastic results for me. The next question is my favourite venue to swim. Despite swimming pretty awfully at the Olympic Games and crashing out in 21st place, despite having a real shot at a medal, it probably has to be that pool in Sydney. 25,000 people in the crowd, all cheering, and you could literally feel the floor vibrate as they were making lots of noise. So that was pretty cool. And my most embarrassing moment, when I was younger, I foolishly watched an older swimmer jump into the swimming pool head first and did this beautiful dive head first without his hands out in front of them. I thought I could do that, and I dived in, cracked my head on the bottom of the pool, and had lots of blood in the water, and everyone had to get out of the pool. So that was pretty embarrassing. Had a big egg on my head for a few days, but there's a lesson there. Do not dive into water where it's very, very shallow, because it can be very dangerous. Okay, so there you go. They're my quick fire questions. Thanks for listening.
So, Adam Whitehead, thank you so much for joining us today.
Yeah, thanks, Dan. I've really looked forward to getting on to one of these videos, because I've seen you host a few now. You've done a great job, and the topic around mental health and wellbeing is something that I'm super passionate about, and I've got a real interest in. So yeah, really looking forward to it.
Fantastic. So, looking forward to hearing from you and what you've got to say. So, as well as competing at the highest level of your sport, you're also a mental health first aid instructor. So, can you tell us, what is mental health?
Yeah, for me, mental health is someone's ability to cope with everyday stresses, strains, chores, tasks, whatever they've got to do, but also live a happy, meaningful life. I think sometimes people make the mistake of referring to somebody with mental health as an issue with their mental health. So we will often say, oh, so and so, they've got mental health. Well, actually, what we're really saying is that person's got poor mental health. So for me, mental health is a spectrum, and we all sit on it. It can fluctuate. It's very fluid. So sometimes we can feel really good. Sometimes we might not feel so good. But when that gets in the way of your everyday life, and it prevents you from enjoying your life and doing the day-to-day things that you enjoy, I think that's when someone is experiencing poor mental health.
Yeah, so interesting. And so a lot of the viewers watching will be fascinated to know what's it like to be an elite athlete at the top level of your sport. So can you tell us a little bit about what that was like, some of the high points, but then also some of the challenges you faced, particularly around mental health?
Yeah, so it was an amazing experience. I think I was very fortunate to have that experience of competing all over the world in all those major competitions. So I went to the European, the Commonwealth, the World, and the Olympic Games. Won several medals, but I guess my career highlights were becoming European champion. I think I swam the 5th fastest time in history. I missed the world record by 0.4 of a second, which is about this much. And so that was a real high. And then obviously went to the Olympic Games. And then I became Commonwealth champion when I was 22, and broke the Commonwealth record to do that. So I was there were some real highs in there. But I guess for me, one of the things that I was aware of from quite a young age, I remember going into secondary school, so I'd have been 10 going on 11, and I found that transition from going into from primary into secondary school quite difficult, and my hair started to fall out, so I had patches of bald hair, bald scalp, sorry, and that was due to stress. And that was probably the early sign that actually I might have a predisposition or be susceptible to experiencing stress and anxiety. And I had to sort of manage that through my teenage years. I think I found my school life quite difficult. I was dyslexic, so that was one of the challenges that I had to overcome. Felt like I was a little bit behind academically to my peers, but watched the Olympic Games when I was 8 at the Seoul Olympics, and that's all I ever wanted to do was to swim at the Olympic Games. So swimming for me was a great outlet, but also that caused me stress as well. When you don't get the results that you want, or you don't get the performances that you sort of trained for, they were sort of quite susceptible times for me to experience low mood. And I think after the Olympic Games, I went to the Olympic Games expecting to make the final with a real shot of getting a medal, and had a really poor performance at the Olympics. I swam 3 seconds slower than my best time. And I finished 21st at the Olympic Games, which is a real disappointment. And when I came back from Sydney, which is where the Olympics was, I was really, you know, I'd lost a lot. So I'd lost my lottery funding, my sponsors. I didn't have the resources to pay for weights coaches, and there literally was just my swimming coach and me left at the end of that year in our team, and I found that really difficult. And I think it was when I was 21, I was prescribed antidepressants for the first time, got a diagnosis of depression, and that was definitely something that I had to manage. So, like anybody experience an illness of any sort, whether that's physical or mental, you have to figure out what's going to work for you and what can get you through those times. And definitely when I was in my 20s, I struggled with that and tried to bury it as much as possible. But I think for me, the most challenging time was actually towards the end of, at the end of my career when I retired. And, what I know now is that my self-esteem, so how I feel about myself, was all wrapped up into something that I did. So, I swam fast and got the performance that I wanted. Yes, I'm a great swimmer, but also I'm a great person. Whereas actually your self-esteem shouldn't really be attached to what you do. So it's taken me a long time to sort of be able to separate the two. So now if I have a bad day at work or with relationships or friends, family, whatever it might be, I have to separate that. And actually that's something that's happened. That's an event or something that's happened to me. But actually at my core, my self-esteem needs to be high. So for me, it involved a lot working on my self-esteem and reminding myself of the good things that I do as a person, not the things that I, how fast I could swim in a swimming pool, or how well I could perform at work. But actually, at my core, am I a good person? Am I content with the person that I am? So, I've spent a lot of time working on that, and still to this day, I don't always get those things right, and still, still find things challenging. I've still got that diagnosis of depression. I still take an antidepressant every day, but I also supplement that with healthy coping strategies.
Yeah, thank you for being so open about that with us and about your experience. And I think it's a real insight. I think we can often see maybe an athlete on the television looking so confident, smiling with that medal, but maybe not realizing they go through the same experiences and they're still a person.
Yeah. For sure, Dan. I mean, I think mental health doesn't discriminate. So it can affect anybody. Rich, poor, a celebrity, a normal person in the street, someone watching this video. It doesn't discriminate, and I think anybody can face these challenges. And I think what's great over the last 5 years, 10 years maybe, that we've started to talk about it a little bit more. We've started to remove some of the stigma that's attached to it, and we've figured out that actually promoting some positive coping strategies is really beneficial for people. For me, when I was swimming at the end of my career, I didn't have any coping strategies really, and some of the reasons for that is because I tried to distance myself from that illness and bury it, like I said, as much as possible. But and one of the strategies, it was linked to my self-esteem, was self-harm. So I experienced, particularly, like I say, when I finished swimming, that I was self-harming, and for me that was using razor blades to cut my arms and my legs. And people do that for when we talk to people who self-harm, they do it for lots of different reasons. Some people will talk about taking back control. Some people will talk about the feeling of physical pain, feeling something. But for me, it was around punishment really. So that completely attached to how I felt about myself. Didn't feel like I was doing as well as I could be. I didn't feel like a good person, and it was a punishment. So that was one of the things that, like I say, I experienced after my career. but I don't self-harm anymore because I've developed some other strategies that are far healthier and far more effective.
Yeah, thank you again for being so open about that with us. And it might be that there's people watching today who are going through those same thoughts or know people as well. And one thing that you mentioned there was the importance of talking to other people as well. Why is it important to talk to other people about your mental health?
It's a great question, and it's something that we obviously really advocate. Now, I think when as a mental health first aid instructor, we look at sort of two models really, and it might be that we can pop this up on the screen, Dan, and share it with people. But there's a medical model. If you imagine an axis running from a social model running from top to bottom, and a medical model running horizontally. And it creates these four quadrants. So if you're above the line, you've got good well-being, you're feeling good. If you're below the line, you're not feeling so good. And then on one side of the axis, you've got no diagnosis, and on the other axis, you've got a diagnosis. So the four quadrants would go feeling great, but no diagnosis, not feeling great, still no diagnosis. The third quadrant would be, I've got a diagnosis of some sort of mental illness, but I'm still not feeling well. And then the top one would be, I've got a diagnosis, but actually I'm doing really well and my mental well-being is good. And quite often people get stuck in that second quadrant. So they're not feeling great, but they haven't got a diagnosis. And one of the things that prevents people moving from quadrant 2 to quadrant 3 is stigma. So quite often, from 10, 20, 30 years ago, mental health hasn't been spoken about. It's had this stigma that's attached to it, that people perceive it as being weak, or you should be able to deal with these things on your own. And actually, we know from research that young people can spend up to 10 years in that second quadrant. And we know that recovery takes place from quadrant 3 into quadrant 4. But you only get a chance to recover when you get that diagnosis and help. So for me, the ability to sort of open up and talk to people, or it's not even people, it's one person. So finding that one person that you trust and that you feel like you can be open with can get that ball rolling, and actually the first people I told, it made it much easier to talk to other people. And now I'm really open and honest about my mental health and where I am. But it was only after talking to people around me that, I went to a doctor, I got a diagnosis, I was able to put in a recovery plan. And now that I see myself in quadrant 4 now, I've got that diagnosis, but actually I'm feeling pretty good, and I'm functioning, and I'm effective, and I feel like I've got a purpose. So for me, being able to talk to someone is really, really important. I've got a fantastic family, luckily. I've got parents that understand it. I've got a parent that has experienced similar things. So I've got that support there. I've got a very loving partner that totally understands me, and that's been a huge beneficial. But even my friends, that I grew up with that might not totally understand what I've been through or deal with, they're super supportive, and I can always pick up the phone to somebody and talk. So if you're listening to this, that's probably my biggest tip, is to start to talk about these things with someone you trust, whether it's a friend, a teacher, a family member, or a school nurse. If you don't want to talk to someone that you know, and sometimes that can be quite difficult, you can speak to your school nurse, you can make a GP appointment, because that's really where we want people to get to. We want people to get to a GP. And for lots of people watching this, when you go to a GP, the first point of call isn't going to be medication. They're going to try and support you with lots of other strategies before you get to medication. And I think sometimes people are concerned that if they go to their GP, he's just going to put me on tablets, and that is definitely not the case.
Yeah, so helpful, that advice and the importance of talking to people. Another thing that can help as well, there's a thing called the 5 ways to well-being. So can you tell us a little bit more? What are the 5 ways to well-being, and how does that connect to mental health?
Yeah, you're going to test me now, aren't you? So for me, well-being is really important. For me, well-being underpins our mental health. So if you think actually if we can work on our well-being, these are strategies that underpin our mental health, that keep us in a good, effective, positive place. So they're very small things that we can do. The 5 ways to well-being are connect. So this is about connecting with people. It's about saying hello to people. I always, when I'm in a shop, I always try and say hello, have a little chat with the person that's serving me. And making those small connections can be really important. But it's also about connecting with your friends and your family. And we've just spoken about the importance of being able to talk to people. Connecting with people is really vital in that as well. But that could be in person to person. It could be online. Whatever your community is, trying to connect with that is a great tip. The second one is about being active. So we know that exercise can help our well-being. That's really well researched, really well documented. And we know with light or moderate exercise, things such as walking or riding your bike can be as effective as antidepressants for low mood and moderate depression. So being active is really important, and building that into your day-to-day is a great tip. Taking notice. So when we're outside, taking notice of things around us, appreciating nature, architecture. So a little tip would be to put your mobile phone away and actually just walk and take notice of the things that are going on, the sounds, the smells, using all those senses to connect with yourself, but also what's going on around you. The next one is about keep learning. So learning new things, new challenges. So this isn't about getting better at school and become a grade A student. This is about taking an interest in things that you're passionate about. So we're in an age now that you can learn anything at any time. If you've got access to the internet, you can go onto YouTube and you can find out lots and lots of information. So last year I won't bore people with my DIY, but I laid a patio in my garden, and rather than having someone coming in to lay the patio, I googled it and I learned how much hardcore that needed to go down, what the cement mixture needed to be, how to set the tiles, how to grout the tiles, and actually it was fantastic. I learned a new skill. I was outside. I was doing something physical. It was brilliant for my well-being. So you can combine some of these as well. And then the final one is give. So these are doing kind things for other people, not for your benefit, although what we're saying is it does benefit us, but giving your time to people, sharing conversation with them, but also just doing something kind out of the goodness of your heart. And actually, that's one of the things that I get from my work, because as an athlete mentor at the trust, I have the opportunity to work with lots of fantastic young people, and actually part of me giving them my thoughts, my ideas, not mine actually, it should be theirs, but actually just giving my time and actually really focusing on them as a person and maximizing their potential. I get a lot from that as well. So they're the 5 ways to well-being: connect, be active, take notice, keep learning, and give. And if you can build some of those into your day-to-day lives, they really help our well-being.
Well, you passed the test, you remembered the 5, and so helpful, like so much to take away there. And what I like as well, you can be so creative with those 5. Like you can have different people might do very different things for each of those 5. Yeah,
Dan, I think we're always going to. I think we're always going to have a favourite. So we'll know lots of people that are super active and believe in exercise. And I guess from an ex-athlete point of view, that might be my go-to strategy. But actually, I use all of them, and you can be really creative. And I think it's about building those things in. Can you walk or ride to school rather than getting a lift in the car? Can you put your phone away when you're travelling on the bus and just look out the window and take notice of what's going on? Can you say hello to somebody in a shop or who's walking past you in a street? You know, can you take your dog out for a walk rather than your mum and dad or guardian taking the dog out for a walk? So it's trying to build in those small things each day, and it doesn't have to take up lots of time, but that are just about you and your well-being, and making sure that you're giving that the time that it deserves.
Yeah, really helpful advice. So last question for you. I think there's so much you've shared already, but are there any other final practical ideas you've got for people watching today? Maybe people who are experiencing some of the things that you've said with regards to their mental health and well-being. So any practical ideas that people can apply in their lives?
Yeah, I think we've covered a lot already, but I think my big tips would be to talk to somebody, like we've already mentioned. I think particularly if you're not feeling well and you've not been feeling well for a sustained period of time, over 3 or 4 weeks, it's time to get to a GP to make that start that conversation. But I also think, one of the reasons why I became a mental health first aid instructor is because I really wanted to understand myself and my illness. So, if you're experiencing anxiety, depression, an eating disorder, you're self-harming, maybe even psychosis, there's lots of illnesses out there. Start to Google. Make sure you're Googling from reputable organisations. Mind is a great one. There's an app called the Hub of Hope, which is great because that gives you a list of all your support services that are going on around you. But almost try to become an expert in what's going on with you, and rather than trying to ignore it, for me, I wanted to master it. I wanted to know everything, so actually I can make really good informed decisions. And the more that you read and the more that you educate yourself, the more you normalise it. And we know, unfortunately, poor mental health affects 1 in 4 of us, and that's just the what's being reported. So we know that those figures are far more likely to be higher. So at some point, I'm going to test my maths now. In a class of 30, I'm going to test my maths. There'll be six people. Dan, you're going to correct me in a second. I am dyslexic, remember. So we know it's going to affect a number of people in that class. So why not get ahead of it, learn about it, and give yourself and equip yourself with the best chance of getting through it. And if you are feeling like that, like we've said, just go and talk to someone.
Yeah, brilliant. A little bit off with the numbers, but about 7 or 8.
7, okay. I was close.
But no, really importantly, I think what you said, so much to take away that people can apply in their life there. So yeah, thank you again so much, Adam, for coming on here, being willing to share your story, the struggles you've had around mental health and well-being, and then some of the things you've applied in your life that have made such a difference.
Lovely, Dan. Thanks for your time. And please, if you are listening to this, like we've said already, just try and get help and support. It's the quicker you get a diagnosis, the quicker the recovery can be. So that's really important.
Fantastic. Adam, thank you so much once again.
Thanks, Dan. Bye for now.
So I hope there's something that you've taken away from listening to Adam's story and how open he's been about his own experience around mental health and mental well-being. And there's something that you can take away and apply in your own life as well. So a big thank you to Adam for coming on here and sharing that with us. And a big thank you too to Westfield Health for making this video possible.